Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Zero Lab Podcast. I'm your co-host, Austin Swain, here with my other two co-hosts, Tom Hellcamp and Max Johnson. It's good to see you both. How are we doing today?
Doing great, Austin. How are you?
Doing all right.
2 thumbs up for me.
Two thumbs up from Max. That's awesome. Well, we got a good lineup here for you today. To start things off, we're going to talk about some of the results that happened over this past weekend, and there were some surprising ones, to say the least.
That's for sure.
We saw Fusion Strike MEW end up winning both the regionals that ended up happening, which I was definitely not expecting.
That was not on anyone's bingo card.
No one saw that coming.
Yeah.
No, very, very surprising. Especially, I think it was very surprising that MEW won both just in general, but the fact that they were both Fusion Strike MEW, really interesting. And I know to me, and I know as we have talked about this a little bit amongst ourselves, it seems to indicate that is kind of a groundswelling of that we're seeing a lot more Arceus, right?
Yeah, I think that the Meloetta is very good, obviously, I think into Arc decks and Lugia as well. If you're able to take that turn 1 going second KO on a V, I think you just you're having a very good time. The other interesting thing, I think there was some conversation before about DTE MEW is just better into things like Lost Box, and I think that's probably still true. But if you think about it, if you go second into Lost Box and you're able to take the first KO, you kind of get up ahead on that prize race, and then they're taking a single prize KO, and you can get them maybe a little bit more easily with Fusion Strike MEW into that 3 prize position where you're able to Roxanne Lost Box, whereas DTE MEW has a harder time because Lost Box is just looking to use Kyogre against you, so they go take 2 prizes and then finish the game with Kyogre. So maybe Meloetta does skew the Lost Box matchup a little bit when you go second and get that first KO. And yeah, like we already said, into Arceus decks, I think it's very good. It's a lot easier to KO V-Stars when you're able to use Melodious Echo. You don't have to use quite as many power tablets and choice belts to get up to that 280 number, because with 4 Fusion Strike Energy in play, you're already hitting that 280 number.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was an interesting result. It was definitely unexpected, but we've seen a lot of Arceus decks. I believe that day 1 of Hartford, between like Arceus Tina and Arceus Duraludon, day 1 was 18% Arceus decks, which is I think the highest we've seen in a very long time.
Probably since like Brilliant Stars.
Since Brilliant Stars,
yeah.
probably.
Well, I don't. Yeah, what was Arceus like? Barrel Pikachu around like Worlds time, because that was when that was big.
Yeah.
That's true. I don't know the usage stats from that particular time frame very well. I was a little checked out.
but it's definitely been a very long time since we've seen that high of a usage of Arceus. So yeah, interesting results.
Yeah, very interesting results. We also saw the trend was not continued with nothing in top 8 was lightning. No lightning.
Miraidon.
No Miraidon. So that was pretty interesting as well. Also, quite notably, there was no Gardevoir in top 8. At least there wasn't in the Hartford.
Yeah, there was none in Malmo either, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Let's look. I'll take a look.
We're gonna fact check ourselves here on this really quick, but yeah, interesting result because of course ever since Tord came up with his list and was able to get second.
There was one Guardian Malmo.
Oh, there was one Guardian Malmo.
Yeah. But kind of the story of the weekend was MEW domination. There was 4 MEW in top 8 at Malmo, and I believe there were 3 MEW in top 8 at Hartford, and then 10th and 11th were 2 more MEWs. So a lot of MEWs.
A lot of MEWs doing quite well.
Lost Box still did very well. I believe there was a few Lost Box at both Malmo and Hartford in the top 8, and then there was some Lugias and Arceus Duraludon. So Lugia, Lost Box, Arc Duraludon, none of those are too surprising.
Right.
But the Fusion MEW definitely is.
Yeah, definitely surprising. And I think one thing maybe to mention with Lost Box too is we've seen the format start to take shape a little bit more, right? We're coming to the end of this current format, and it does seem as though the Kyogre builds of Lost Box seem to be sort of the reigning champion, it seems, of the Lost Box builds. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? What do you think of the Kyogre? Would you agree that's kind of the best the best version to play right now?
In my experience, I would say right now, if I were to play a Lost Box deck, at least for sure pre-Hartford, if I would have went to Hartford, I would have played Kyogre Lost Box, I think. And I think that would have been my play. I think it's got the most answers for the most things. But I don't know. I think I think like Sablezard's not in a good spot right now. I think like other turbo versions that like play like the Sky Seal Stone instead of the Kyogre, I feel like they're okay, but I still feel like the Kyogre is better. So yeah, I would say Kyogre is probably the best version right now, but it takes a really good player to pilot it. It's hard not to tie a bunch of times.
So one thing to know, and I agree with all of that. One of the Lost Box at Malmo in the top 8 was Sablezard, which is interesting, but it also kind of comes down to what matchups are you hitting. I think Sablezard can have a pretty good time into the mirror, although Turbo just gets so quickly to that 10 with the vacuums and the 4 Seal Stones. And Greninja is really a challenge for Sablezard because you have to recycle your Manaphy. I didn't exactly see the list, but maybe they played 2. But yeah, interesting results. I think that the Kyogre has kind of solidified its spot as the best Lost Box deck, though. It just has so many options. It's really the best way to beat Lugia. Now, one thing to mention is Andrew Hedrick, multiple-time regional champion, just won an SPE a couple weeks ago with Lost Box, and it's the same Lost Box list he's been piloting, I think, throughout all of this format, and that's the Sky Seal Stone version. He's not playing Kyogre. So I think that deck still has some legs. One thing I've been thinking about recently is, can that Sky Seal Stone version bring in a Galarian Zapdos V for the Arceus decks? But then the other question is, does it need it? Who knows? I don't know. Because you can kind of do the same thing with Dragonite. With the Sky Seal Stone after you set up some damage on it.
And Dragonite's just better into more things. I will say, I thought was interesting was looking at the list that Grant and his group piloted. They went really heavy with 4 gate, 4 recyclers. I think he cut the boss for a 4th recycler from his Portland list. And I thought that was kind of a statement, I am getting the Kyogre off this game. It's going to happen. So I thought that was kind of interesting, to really commit to the 4 gates or in the 4 recyclers. Yeah,
I think it's kind of come to the point where, especially or primarily against the Arceus decks, Kyogre is about your only out to win. You're always playing towards that Kyogre play against the Arceus decks. Right. So I think against Arctina, I think about the Kyogre build, and it's you're only beating that with Kyogre. You're not gonna probably Dragonite your way into a win against that deck.
Right, because each turn you really need to be on average doing, at least 140 damage, which the deck really struggles, of course, to do. In a lot of cases, unless you're able to get multiple Greninjas off and things like that, and even then it's still really tricky. It's really all about KOing against Arceus. It's all about KOing one B-Star, setting up another B-Star on the bench with the damage that Kyogre can finish it off, and then echoing Horn, one of the other Vs, and that's your route. And it's just kind of can you get there through their judges and pass that they're going to play against you. So yeah, interesting. Like you mentioned, no Miraidon in top 8. I think that was the first time for a U.S. regional in this format that there was no Miraidon in top 8. But we've only had one other regional. But EUIC also had it. I think we saw Miraidon at the SPE in top 8 as well. I believe so.
So it's been around, and it still keeps making the graphic for day 1 meta share of the top 6 decks.
People like their Miraidon.
People do like their Miraidon.
Yeah, so I think it's been pretty steady around that, I think 6 to 7% usage or something like that, which is definitely that's a played deck. That's around the same, just for context, right? That's a similar number to what Reggie's from last format was played most tournaments, was about that 7.5%.
Yep.
So Lord knows, it felt like a lot of Reggies out there.
Miraidon is a scary deck when it gets going. So we had a League Cup last weekend, and I played against a Miraidon player who didn't miss a single thing. They got 2 energy off of every electric generator. They never missed an attack. They were never missing the cards they needed. They played a Roxanne in Miraidon, which is like, how are you going to find the Roxanne when you need it? But nope, he just had the Roxanne in hand on the turn he needed it. When I had game in hand, he Roxannes me, and I lose. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, if they just sometimes if Miraidon just hits their everything, they just
had
it's
everything
hard to
they
beat them.
Yep.
I think also like the using the Magnezone V and V Star are just really powerful cards right now. So the Miraidon's really basically the only deck that's able to use those, and so that's just a really big bonus. It's like such a strong card in the format right now, I think.
Yeah, I really hope it would be great to see a Flaffy deck maybe make its way in now that we have the Ampharos EX around. So our next regional we're kind of looking forward to is Milwaukee. Maybe we'll see some Flaffy, Ampharos, Miraidon shenanigans.
That would certainly be interesting. I do definitely think that the Magnezone is definitely the way, I think, for Lightning. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh, but if you're not playing the Magnezone, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You're probably having
too good
tough
of a card.
Yeah, I think it is really good, especially just because of that first attack on the V.
Right.
Where you can go 40 damage, bring up the Manaphy, KO it with weakness, and then the next turn go into the V-Star power to do 90-90. I think that's
just so relevant.
So relevant into Gardevoir, so relevant into Lost Box. And even that 90-90 can be good for setting up math in other matchups as well.
Exactly. I mean, very few things withstand 90 plus 220.
Yep.
Even 90 plus 200. These are big numbers. It starts adding up quick.
Yep, for sure. So that was kind of the results of this weekend. So looking forward to Milwaukee, which is in about a week and a half here. What do we think that meta looks like? How do we think things shape out after these results? And what are you looking to play in Milwaukee? And what are you thinking you'll be playing against a lot of at Milwaukee?
So first and foremost, I think we saw a big rise of Arceus with Umbreon at Hartford. And I think that's a deck that's kind of quickly picking up steam. It's got some cool things it can do with the Hawlucha and Radiant Alakazam to take first or the second turn going first knockouts with the Arceus V-Star. So that's pretty cool. It has like pretty solid matchup into Guardy. It has a lot of answers for a lot of things. So I think that's a deck that I expect to have a pretty big increase in meta share probably.
Yeah, I would expect that too.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to be seeing more of that. To me, there is a little bit of a question mark around where MEW is going to fall. Because, of course, typically what we see when regional is completed, especially heading into the immediate next one, is what played really well in the last regionals before the one that you're currently playing in tends to be, those decks tend to be played quite a bit more than they were before. And not only that, but typically the exact same list that won tends to be very, very popular. Sometimes, there'll be a couple of cards that get changed, but for the most part, it's a very similar 60. And if that does end up being the case, that makes me wonder where Arceus is actually going to stand. How many more people are going to be making the switch over to a Fusion Strike MEW build? And also, to me, that leaves the question of exactly where Lost Box is going to fit into the mix with the Kyogre. If it's true, potentially, that, as we were saying before, some of the prize exchanging gets a little bit trickier when you do have to start dealing with the Meloetta. If that starts becoming a problem, I don't know. I think that there's some question marks in my mind a little bit based off of these last results for sure. I think that there's still going to be a significant amount of Lost Box played. There's definitely going to be a lot of Arceus that's going to get played. Also, does MEW start to rise up even more as well? Which I can't remember. It's been, I think, 15%?
It's usually around 12 or 15%. And that's one of the interesting things about MEW is it's like that established deck that's been in the format for so long. And it's always been like a top-tier deck despite all the counters in the format now for it. And to be honest with you, although it's finally kind of got its Fusion Strike MEW win, I don't really expect it to change its meta share much. I think it'll still be around that 12 or 15% of the meta share. I think there's a lot of ways to deal with MEW. instead of people jumping over to it, I think we might see people play just some more counters.
Sure.
Maybe people who weren't playing a Drapion in their deck will put one in, or like the Arceus Umbreon deck, it relies a lot on the weakness of the Umbreon to hit the Mews, but do they slot in one Drapion to make up for those games where the Mew goes heavily after the Umbreons before they're evolved, something like that. There could be a little bit more respect on Mew, but I don't really see the meta share go up for it.
Yeah. How much, because I think it's probably pretty safe to say, right, that before this weekend, the DTE version of Mew was by far more popular.
Yeah.
But how much more popular? Do we think that the Fusion Strike Mew, was that 5%
I would
out of the 15? Or
I don't know the stats on this,
maybe?
but my guess would be there was not a single Mew in any day 2 that was not DTE Mew. Just in general, just
okay.
over the last couple formats.
No, I think a couple Fusion Mews have made day 2 here and there. It's popped up, but it's nowhere near 5% of the Mews.
Of the overall Mews.
Yeah, I would say probably 1% at most.
Yeah, it's just
the most.
Especially in the Mews making it into day 2. You might I would see maybe more Fusion Mews be kind of at the bottom tables of day 1 of people who kind of bought the Mew battle deck, and that's what they've kind of been playing with. But that's a different thing. But I could see, I think Fusion Mew is a deck that people want to be good. Mew players are man, I miss those Fusion days when I could Meloetta donk people.
Right. Those are bad days.
So you could see, I could see some people switching over to it just kind of out of love of that sort of style of the deck. But I do still think probably the DTE version is just better.
Okay, so here's a question.
Mew. Sorry, just one last thing on that. Mew DTE is still the best Path Judge deck we have.
Mm-hmm.
So
hilariously enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So when Mew was doing good in the past, right? If we saw it do well at a regional, at the next regional, we would see a lot more Drapion. That's just a blanket answer from you. But that was specifically for the DTE version. Are there any cards that people, if you were worried about Fusion Mew, is there any other answers that people have that are strong, that they can put in and slot in to combat Fusion Mew?
So, one thing I'm curious about is I didn't really totally see the full list, so I don't remember. Well, I saw the list. I just don't remember how many stadiums they were playing or what stadiums they were playing. But I think they were playing 2 stadiums. I think one was Lost City and one was a Path or something like that for the winning list.
They're also playing the Deoxys.
They were playing the Deoxys. They were playing 3/4 Sealstone and 4 Vacuums. So they do have a lot of stadium discard, but you could see a scenario where your own Path against a Mew could stick. They have 4 Sealstone, so that's their Path out. They have 4 Vacuums, that's a Path out. But and I guess that's against DTE Mew as well. You could still stick a Path against them potentially. But I don't know. I think the Meloetta is just really strong if you get it going. It's just obviously less consistent than the DTE Mew.
Yeah, I know we had the celebrations of Veltal. That was an answer that we saw against Fusion Mew in the past. I don't know if there's enough in the format to justify playing that against other decks. But
it could be kind of interesting in an Arc deck because you could see a scenario where I think one of the scary things for Arc decks is Single Strike Urshifu and Tyranitar. And Veltal to get rid of a lot of those Single Strike energies against Lugia as well, and its utility into Mew. You could see a Yveltal kind of coming into play for some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Yveltal is definitely also good into Lugia, like you said. I was messing around with couple control builds for a little bit on ladder, and when I would be running into any Lugias, that was always time for that Yveltal to come out and start wrecking some havoc.
Yeah,
that also could be definitely an answer. Of course, you're not taking prizes doing that, but you are definitely you're causing a huge headache for the Mew player.
Yeah.
So moving forward, one of the things we're going to talk about, or I guess talking more about Milwaukee here that's going to be coming up. This I'm really excited. This will be my first regional that I've been able to attend since Salt Lake City which just feels like forever ago.
Was that like October of last year?
It was, yeah. I think it was early or mid-October maybe.
Yeah, it was the last regional in
Lost Origin.
In Lost Origin.
Yeah.
Right. So that was really wild. I was on the Reggie
That was before
train.
the dark days.
Before the dark days of
Silver
Lugia.
Tempest.
Exactly. I never went to a single regional during the Silver Tempest format, which is
You didn't miss much.
which is kind
Well, you missed Max winning one, I guess. But other than that,
That's true.
Or wait a minute. Am I totally misremembering? I thought maybe Salt Lake was.
no, it was Lost Origin.
Was it Lost Origin? Okay. Yeah.
Remember, because everyone was playing Kyurem at Salt Lake.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I didn't see any, but I did hear that people were playing it.
Yeah.
But so looking forward to Milwaukee. There's going to be, I think, a lot to look forward to. I know that some of our listeners and some of the people here in Minnesota, we've been able to talk with some people who this is going to be their first regional ever. So that's going to be really exciting, and I'm excited that all three of us are going to be able to attend.
Yeah.
It's been a while since that's been able to happen, so that'll be a lot of fun as well. And what do we think we're going to be probably coming to expect? Probably, do we feel like it's going to be more or less the same of some of these other regionals that we've seen? Is there anything else? Any curveballs that we think may be throwing a wrench into any plans?
There's a slight curveball this weekend. And it's actually Milwaukee's Pride weekend. So it's going to probably be pretty busy in the city. I know that we were looking at hotels and we're like, why are hotels so booked and so expensive? And we're like, apparently 20,000 people are going to be in town for the Pride Parade. So be wary of that. Like if you're going to be in a hotel that's further from the venue, you might have, I don't know what driving is going to be like downtown, that sort of thing. So that's just a call out for people who might not have known that the city's going to be pretty busy that weekend.
Yeah, I did not know that. So that's good. That's good for me to know too. Yeah.
So that'll be one thing to keep in mind. But one thing that I kind of always tell people for their first regional is just go there and have fun and play the deck you're most comfortable playing. Because you're always going to do the best with the deck you're most comfortable with. I think that goes for seasoned players as well as new players. But specifically new players, just play what you're comfortable with and try to have a good time. And one of the things that kind of makes the day go a little bit easier is if you can show up early enough on Friday to register and pick up your swag Friday night at the venue instead of worrying about that Saturday morning. That's going to make your day a lot easier. So, and I guess just to bring this down to the level of like brand new person, I know on the Pokemon website it says that the event is Friday to Sunday, but we don't start playing until Saturday morning around 8:30 a.m. So, but the venue is open on Friday for some side events and to register and to pick up your swag. So what I would recommend, if you can, get to Milwaukee, in the afternoon, 3, 4, 5 o'clock if you can. Go to the venue, check in. You'll get a wristband that you keep on for the whole weekend that gets you into the venue. Go find the swag table and pick up your swag for the tournament. Walk around, look at the vendors, have a good time, play some games, play some side events if there's some side events going on. And just relax, have a good time with your friends that you're there traveling with. And then get a good night's sleep before. Don't stay up too late playing too many games. You're going to have plenty of Pokemon on Saturday. So if you're comfortable with the deck you've chosen, make sure your deck list is submitted before. I think deck lists are probably due at 8 a.m. Saturday morning.
Yeah,
that sounds right.
I like to have my deck list submitted before I even leave. Or at least a list, so that if I forget, I at least have a list submitted. But whatever your final list is, try to submit that Friday night right before you go to bed. Then you wake up in the morning, you don't have to worry about a list. Re-sleeve your deck, have brand new sleeves on your deck if you feel like you need it. And show up to the venue around 8 and be ready to go by 8:30 for our first round. So bring snacks.
Yeah,
have water.
I would say one of the biggest things that can be a pain to navigate if it's your first time and you don't know what to expect is food and a lunch break.
Yeah.
Every organizer does things differently. If there even is a lunch break, how long the lunch break might be, what round it's after. And something that you don't want to get caught up in is just not having a plan for lunch. Because if you show up and you are just going to get something like either from the venue or from a restaurant that's like nearby the venue, you might be out of luck because everybody goes to the nearby restaurants, and you could be waiting so long that you don't even get your food before the next round starts.
Right.
So definitely, I would recommend either packing a lunch, or if you are driving to Milwaukee, you could just drive like a couple minutes away and avoid like the big crowds. Although it sounds like with Pride, the crowds could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And then as for breakfast, if you're not staying at a hotel that serves breakfast, maybe just pack some like granola bars or something or a banana that you can eat the day of.
Yep.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. I know for me, for dinner, I will be going. There's this great barbecue restaurant that we went to last year that was like right across the street from the venue, connected to our hotel. Do you guys remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah,
that was really
that was good. So
I can't remember
that's
what it was
my plan
called,
for dinner Saturday night. I don't remember what it's called, but that's my plan for Saturday night. But yeah, I would say check out the venue. Make sure you know where bathrooms are. Make sure you know where a water fountain is. Bring snacks. There's also a potential, we haven't heard yet, but there's also a potential there is no lunch break at Milwaukee. I know Hartford didn't. There's been some dialogue in the community of whether lunch breaks are good or bad. So it's kind of up in the air until they announce it. So make sure you have food packed just in case. There will be concessions too at the venue probably, but those aren't not the sort of food you probably want to eat during the day. They'll make you feel kind of sleepy in your next round afterwards.
It's very, very possible.
Yeah, for sure.
And just for any like brand new players, like just some other things to keep in mind. You'll typically get your pairings online, so make sure your phone is charged the night before. And sometimes the reception can be kind of off, so they will post paper pairings too, but that can make it more stressful to beat the rush for the paper pairings and then get to your table. And then something else I would recommend too is, to make day 2, you have to have a record of 6-2-1. So if that is your goal, you want to not tie.
Yep.
Tying's pretty bad. So make sure, like, something that you can do is bring a watch and just make sure that you are keeping track of when the round starts, so that way you know how much time is left. Knowing when to scoop in a game if you're losing pretty badly, to give yourself enough time to, win subsequent games and take the round. And something else that you can bring is like a little like pad and paper. So when you're checking your prizes, you can write down whatever prizes, whatever notes you want to take on the game. That's something that can be really helpful. Just to try to do well. Yeah,
yeah. So it depends on what your goal is. Like Max said, if your goal is to make day 2, you do need to have a record of 6-2-1 or 5-0-4 at the minimum, and that means you're going to have to play fast and not tie. You also kind of know when you're out of that goal. If you get to 3 losses or a loss and 3 ties, you're probably out of day 2, or you're definitely out of day 2. But if this is your first regional, I think day 2 is a great goal. But I think that whatever your goal is, just try to have fun. My first regional, I played a terrible deck, and I did moderately bad. But it was a great time. Like it's always just fun. The side events are fun too. If you ever end up dropping out, you can play in a bunch of side events. But if you do well at your first tournament, that's awesome too. But make sure you know what your goals are going in. Yeah. If your goal is to win the whole event, that's amazing. But make sure that your play style and the deck you're choosing are conducive to that. Then, right? If you're like, I want to play a fun deck, but my goal is also to win the tournament. Those two things aren't like you might get disappointed, right? But if your goal is to do really well and you're playing a really good deck, like Max mentioned, there's a few things you can do that are going to be helpful, which is wearing a watch, knowing when a round starts, knowing when it's going to end, knowing when to scoop a game that you're probably going to lose, knowing your prizes, and maybe keeping track of them on a notepad. Those sorts of things are things that maybe you don't see people do at locals that you will see people do at a regional.
Yeah. Definitely. And then, if you do end up, not making day 2, a lot of times they'll run like a cup on day 2. Word of warning, that will fill up very, very quickly. Yep. You'll probably have to register. Cup you've ever played. It'll be the biggest league cup. You'll probably have to, if that's something you're interested in, you'll probably have to register the night before. They'll just kind of just drop it and you'll just have to register. Yeah. And then I wouldn't be surprised if they have some side events as pre-releases for Paldea Evolved, because the timing would line up.
That's right. That would be really cool.
Those will also fill up very quickly. So if it's something you're interested in, just make sure to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. One last thing I'll mention on just like the competitive side of things is if you feel weird about a ruling, never feel bad about calling a judge. If it is not your job to fix a board state where your opponent messed up, it's not your job for them to be like, well, can I just do this? And you say yes. The judges are there to fix a broken board state. It's not malicious of you, and you should never feel bad for calling a judge. Even if you end up being wrong, it's always better to check with the judge. The sad reality of it is some people will try to take advantage, especially if they think you're a new player, and they will do things to decrease the variance they're experiencing to try to make sure that they win. And if you ever feel weird about something, do not feel bad about calling a judge. If your opponent tells you, oh, this is the ruling of the card, and you're not sure about it, don't just take your opponent's word for it. Call the judge and make sure. And if you don't feel good about the judge's answer, because some of the judges walking around are there to have fun, and they might not even know the ruling, you can always appeal to a head judge, even if you don't like the initial judge's ruling. And I would usually recommend doing that, especially if you feel like you're right about the call. So, and if you went through all of that and you were still wrong, you don't feel bad about that. You'll get a time extension for the game. You were wrong. It's always better to make sure that you feel good about the game state. So never feel bad about calling a judge.
Here's an example of that, right? I just 2 weekends ago, me and Max and a couple people that we know, we played in a League Cup. And one of the opponents that I had during one of my rounds had a question about how Moonglow reverse worked with Cresselia. And he wasn't sure if I had to essentially declare the damage from each individual Pokemon or not. And the ruling is officially, once you declare the attack, you don't have an option. All of the damage just gets moved to whatever target that you choose. But he wasn't sure about that. I tried to reassure him, I am quite familiar with this ruling, and, it's not an optional effect, but he did want to call a judge over, which was, again, completely fine, and I wasn't upset about that. In fact, it was a good opportunity, right, to be able to, just take a little breather for a moment from the game, right, and also just get that clarification so that there's no hard feelings, there's no miscommunications, and so that was a really positive experience. And so being able to talk to judges hopefully will result in that further clarity. A
few other things to note. As you get later in the day, if you're doing well, you may get to a point where a tie is the same as a loss, and if you tie your opponent, it will be the same as a loss for either of you, and if you tie, both of you are guaranteed to not make day 2. You'll run into situations then where you and your opponent can make a gentleman's agreement that if you're going to go to a tie, one of you will scoop to the other based on a gentleman's agreement. That can be around board state, that can be around number of prizes taken, something like that. You don't have to agree to that, so never feel pressured to agree to a gentleman's agreement. But I think once you make one, you better stick to it. And so make sure that you know what you're agreeing to before you agree to a gentleman's agreement with somebody. And then the other thing is, even if you make a gentleman's agreement, you have to be aware that your opponent also might not stick to it, and there's no rule that they have to. So even if you make a gentleman's agreement and your opponent's kind of a jerk, they might not stick to it, and you can't really call a judge on something like that.
Right.
Usually people are pretty good about it, though, so I wouldn't say that's a reason not to make a gentleman's agreement. I think you always should make a gentleman's agreement in a scenario where a tie is as good as a loss for both of you. And stick to it, but make sure you guys know what you're deciding the gentleman's agreement on, whether it's board state or prizes taken or something like that. The other thing
make sure that it's something that to do with board state. It can't be anything that it has to do with chance, such as a coin flip or a dice roll. You cannot leave the outcome of game up to chance. That will be a double DQ for you and your opponent.
So specifically, there could be a scenario where your opponent kind of picks up a dice and kind of looks at you and sort of says, heads or tails. And sometimes people will decide a game on a coin flip where they would have tied. and that is illegal.
Right. That is against Pokemon play rules.
Yeah, you will get DQ'd if a judge sees that.
You will get DQ'd.
Now that
be aware.
Yeah, be aware.
Be aware.
Now that doesn't mean that doesn't happen without judges seeing it, and players do that all the time, because I think that happens quite frequently. But just be aware that that is a DQable offense, and you probably shouldn't go for it.
Yeah.
So
definitely not a recommendation.
Yeah. So anything else to mention for new people?
I would say sometimes, like you might get the opponent, if you're doing, well in day one and you're a newer player, you might get the opponent that, like, in those later stages where a game might be a tie, instead of looking for a gentleman's agreement, they may pose the question, how many points do you have? So like kind of saying that, like, they're going for an invite, and if you're not, you should scoop to them. Don't ever feel pressured to do that. It's, it's within your right to do that if you want to, but never feel pressured. And your opponent, it actually is also against the rules to ask your opponent to scoop to you.
Yeah. So that's the other thing, we're getting down kind of to the wire in terms of points for Worlds. There's only 2 U.S. regionals left, I believe. This one in Fresno, and then there's NAIC, and that's the end of the season. So people are getting down to the wire on making sure that they have their Worlds invite, and there will be people who want you to scoop to them because you're a new player, you're not going for your Worlds invite, and I need points. Never feel pressured to do that, but I am going for my Worlds invite, and I do need points. So if you do play me, I would appreciate a scoop. No, never feel pressured to scoop. If someone wants their Worlds invite, they need to earn it. So that's about that.
Yeah, like the only way I'm getting my Worlds invite is if I win this regional, which.
Yeah, but then you still also have to get like top 64 at NAIC even if you win Milwaukee.
Would I really?
Because you have to get 350 and it's 200 for a win. I don't. You already have some points.
I do have some points, but
and between cups challenges, maybe. You're fine.
It'd be tough, but also I'm not saying I'm not out here to try. I'm going to try and win. I've got some spice I'm working with.
He has some spice.
We've tested it, and it's.
Spicy.
I'm not going to reveal anything. I know
there's like all the different spice girls. What would you label your spice out of all the different things? The ice spice.
I'm gonna say
because ice spice is for next format.
That's for next format.
Right. Ice spice this is not ice spice. I would say this is kinetic spice.
Kinetic spice.
Kinetic spice.
I don't think I knew that one.
I don't think I knew that one. Yeah. Is that one of the Spice Girls like sisters?
No. It actually has nothing to do with Spice Girls because I don't know much about the Spice Girls.
I don't really either.
Yeah. It's.
You could have told me
Kinetic
Spice was one of them, and I probably wouldn't have believed you. But it's okay. So if this is your first regional, have fun. Do your best. Play in side events. If you don't make day 2, just kind of make the most of the weekend and have a good time with your friends.
Yeah. Shout out Tim for asking that question, by the way. He's a local in our scene.
We'll take more viewer questions, too, as we go on.
We'd love to take more viewer questions. So if you have any questions for us, please leave them in the comments below.
Leave them in the comments below, and we'll definitely start taking some more viewer questions because we didn't even think about that until Tim asked us. So, thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim. Great question.
All right, so now let's get into our Stellar Wish segment. This is the part of the show where we talk about a card that we love, that we wish was good, but no, never will be. So Max, I know you have one picked out already, so kick us off.
Yeah, I got Ho-Oh V. And so for me, Ho-Oh has always had a special place in my heart. It was one of my favorite Pokemon when I was a kid. It was the first deck I built when I got into the Pokemon trading card game in Diamond and Pearl. It was this terrible deck that the Ho-Oh did 20 damage for every basic energy attached to it, and then when it got knocked out, you could flip a coin, and if heads, it wasn't knocked out, but your opponent still took a prize card. So it was super fun, and I was pretty excited when Ho-Oh V was announced because, being able to accelerate 4 energy into play seems like a pretty good effect, and so right away, I was playing Darkrai at the time, so I thought, could go into Darkrai. Thornton, exactly. One of my other favorite cards. And then you have I made this kind of Dialga deck that accelerated energy with Ho-Oh, Thornton into Dialga, and then get a turn 2 Star Chronos, which was actually pretty good, but it's just
crazy.
Super L to Lost Box at the time. I
Maybe
think
we can play it for Milwaukee now.
Yeah. I think if you play it for Milwaukee, you're making a huge mistake because the ability to just end your turn, and so it's just bad. If you go second, it's really bad.
Yeah.
If you go first, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, just not enough to make it work. I don't think it would be any cards that come out that would make it work, but yeah, I wish it was good.
Yeah. My stellar wish for this week is Greninja V Union. So when the V Unions got released, I looked at all of them and I said, if any of these is ever going to be good, it's going to be Greninja. So that was the V Union box that I bought, because Greninja V Union for 3 energy does 100 damage to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Which is still so
bonkers.
good. There's got to be a way to make Greninja V Union good, but there's not. There isn't. It's just never going to be good. And so for that reason, Greninja V Union is my stellar wish this week. Like, okay, Palkia, Lost City, Melanie, Irida, Ultra Ball, all these things can go into like a great
Canceling Clone even.
canceling clone. There's
Lost
so many
City.
cards, and that's the problem. There's too many cards you need to pull off the combo. But it's so cool. I love Greninja V Union. I just always wanted that to be good.
Me and Tom, we've both been trying to figure some kind of list with that out. I feel like I keep getting close, but then also there are so many matchups where Palkia just is not quite enough to be able to get you there, as crazy as that sounds. And it's
just too hard to get the V Union pieces in the discard, honestly.
Soon enough.
Right. Yeah.
Very
if there was, honestly, like maybe if Battle Compressor was around.
I
Professor
think
Burnett's too slow because it's your support for turn. But if you could play like a couple Battle Compressor in your deck, maybe that would be enough.
Oh, that would definitely be enough. And that'd just be a really good card for Palkia anyway, because you can also get water energy into the bin really quick, which honestly,
reprint Battle Compressor.
Huge problem I found.
No, don't do it.
Too much.
Although
Lugia?
the Wings of Union could take...
Lugia's in format. Don't reprint Battle Compressor.
Okay, that's fair. Wait until Lugia rotates, maybe.
Then maybe.
Once it's SVI on.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can do it.
Maybe that's what they're building up to. You know, we're kind of like in the new standard format. We got an N reprint.
Yeah.
We're getting
Superior Energy reprint. Scramble Energy reprint.
Could we get a Versus Seeker reprint? I don't think so. But that would be cool.
That was a great card.
That would be cool. I do think that a few things I think that I would like to see, and this is just like off topic now, but when we get to like Scarlet and Violet on, I think I'd like to see the turn 1 supporter rule come back. To be able to play support on your first turn. I think that cards like Gloria, which will rotate at that time, but like not Professor Burnett, who is the professor that searched for 3 Pokemon back in the day.
Bridget.
Yeah, she's not a professor. Bridget. Like those sorts of cards I think are probably good for a format, and definitely better for a format than something like Battle VIP. And by the time we get to Scarlet Violet on, Battle VIP Pass will have rotated. I think it would be nice to be able to play supporters on turn 1 again. Maybe not. I go back and forth on it, but I think that rule was good for the format we were in when Sword and Shield started. But it might get a little limiting in the future.
You know, I actually saw an interesting point that Jay Gearhart made on Twitter.
He's always
cooking.
Yeah.
He said that what if turn 1 you could play supporter, but you can't play item cards. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's interesting, but that's really tough. So then what you're saying is people's decks are going to be full of supporters instead of items.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
It could be interesting. I just think of all the turns where I don't know, I nest ball for a Greninja. I'm like, this is my only draw on my opening turn is to like get this Greninja out. I don't know. But, I think some things could shake up once we get to just a Scarlet and Violet on format.
Yeah.
And I think the future is bright.
It's looking good.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll finally be able to re-change the rare candy effect to how it used to be.
It would have to still be non-rule boxes, I think.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Because the Stage 2 EXs are very strong that they're printing. It's just kind of like, are they good enough for a Stage 2? But if you were able to do like the rare candy on the turn, you put the basic into play,
right.
That would be
Yeah.
That might be a little too busted for Guardy, who's already going to be the best deck in format next format.
But also by that time we lose Shining Arcana.
That's true.
You know, there's
the Curlia. You even lose the Curlia.
And losing Curlia, right? So there are a lot of pieces missing, but you know, who knows? We'll see what happens. But
yeah. All right, what's your stellar wish for the week?
So my stellar wish for this week was in my head just moments ago, and now I'm having a horrific brain fart. So I apologize. It's got to be, it's rattling around in there somewhere for sure. I know it. But I'm going to, until I can think of what my actual one is, I'm going to say Rare Candy. And
you're saying that card's not good?
No, it's not good.
You literally are playing it in Guardy right now.
Yes, it is good. Like, it's obviously good. It's the only card that does what it does. I understand that. But man, it fell from grace. It fell from grace. There's just like, there's very little reason to be chalking your deck full with rare candies, it seems like these days. I think once Bax Caliber comes out, I think that there's a better argument to be able to be made for playing a really heavy rare candy line. And I even messed around with Gardevoir with quad rare candy, cutting a Curlia, so only playing 3 Curlia. And that did feel really good a lot of the time, but it also was real bad when you didn't hit it. Yeah. It was a very high roll sort of a situation, and I don't know. Yeah. It's a fine card. It's just not what it could be. Yeah. It's not what it could be. And we still right now don't have enough Stage 2 EXs that are playable to even make it a card, even in its current state, to the point where it's a broken card. Which, you know, maybe that's fair, maybe that's fine.
It's tough, right? Like if any decks are going to play rare candy, like Stage 2 EXs are going to play it, it's got to be Iridite decks, right? Because let you find the rare candy. Yeah. I guess you have Arven too, which is a potential combination with rare candy in the future. But yeah,
I think they need to reprint Guardian or Great Encounters Claydol. If you don't know what that card is,
wow,
you could put up to 2 cards from your hand onto the bottom of your deck. You had to do at least one, and then you draw till you have 6 cards in hand. We need some kind of a card like that back.
We have 3 cards like that.
Well, Babarrel and
Babarrel.
No, but there's nothing. Well, I guess Squovit's the closest because of the
Babarrel.
Yeah. You could self-put cards onto the bottom of your deck, which is so useful.
Yeah.
Like, how just sucky is it when you have to research away cards that you need for the end game against a certain
This
deck.
Isn't new, but like, I kind of want, like, people have done this, but I've been thinking about playing MEW for Milwaukee. Maybe I just throw a Squirrelbet in there.
The squirrel.
And then Lost Box is like, oh, I'm going to take out that Squirrelbet. It's like, too bad. Now you're on 3 prizes. Roxanne.
It's too tempting.
Who's going to not want to knock out that squirrel?
Squirrelbet Thornton. Squirrelbet Thornton Manaphy.
You Thornton your Squirrelbet into a Manaphy? In MEW? To avoid the Kyogre?
Yeah.
Busted.
I don't know. Maybe it's something. It could be something.
Anyway.
Somebody's got to try it. If you're out there and that sounds interesting, you should try it.
Yeah.
Tell us how it is.
You know, I'm going to make another second stellar wish because I have a bold take. Not that bold. Skeledirge EX, I actually thought was a really cool card when it was revealed. And it just never got its time to shine because Chien-Pao is coming out in the same set.
Yeah.
And what is Skeledirge? What is a boy to do when it gets hit for weakness? And its whole point of the deck was to tank. I don't know what you do. Very sad.
What does it do again?
It has like 340 HP. It does like 270 damage for 2 fire energy, but it does like 10 or 20 less.
10 less for every damage.
10 less for every damage counter on it. So the point of the deck was like you would Magma Basin and use like the Char Cadet dude, and you would Herald the Skeledirge each turn, and then just move the energy back onto it with not Char Cadet. Armarouge.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just never going to happen now that water.
Never going to happen because they always print good fire stuff with absolutely cracked out water stuff. It never ceases to amaze me.
Back in the day, the tag team fire stuff, that was good for a long time.
That's true. Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're scared of fire. I think they're scared to make fire good again.
You can shed a tear for fire stuff and lightning. Then just don't forget about the grass stuff. That has never been
good.
They always make Psychic good. Psychic's just always busted.
Yeah, Psychic's always pretty good.
But anyway, Those are good
I feel like
tangents.
psychic Pokemon lend themselves to cooler effects and abilities than
Yeah.
other Pokemon, though.
Gardevoir's just always had cool abilities
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah, Gardevoir has always been a strong
Maybe
card.
Grass's day is coming. I'm telling you guys, this Toedscroll EX.
That's
It
the
could-
best grass card they've printed in years.
It could
And
end
it's
up
not
actually
even
being-
good because it's grass. It's just a good ability.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it has a pretty
Um,
good attack too, right?
Yeah.
It's got a good
Hits
attack.
good numbers, I think.
Yeah. It could. Hey, I have hope.
It won't be worse than anything grass that we've gotten recently.
That's true. That's very true. All right. Well, with all of that said and done, I think that about wraps us up for this week. If you're going to Milwaukee, we will all be there. So feel free to come up and say hi to us. We'd love to hear from our viewers. If you have any questions that you want for like the weekly question now, leave it down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, see ya.